Right, what am I doing now? Let's get the headlight on so I can show you what I'm actually doing. I'm in the dark, in a strange and creepy area. I did have some comments on one of the last videos. Someone said, what are you doing in a place like that? It's horrific. I don't think it's that bad, is it? Look, some pretty good art. Better than me at GCSE art. Look at that. It's got the little spray cans on the top there with the thing on the Skeletor thing. There's some rats over there and some skeletons. it's not creepy at all. Okay, right. Moving onward and upward, what are we looking at here as I follow this strange trail? We are looking at something new from Acebeam. I shouldn't be waffling here, right? Acebeam sent me this and said, have a good look, see what you think of it. Be honest, we won't get sort of to tell you what to say. We won't get edited or anything like that. Be honest, put what you like, and that's what I've done. So this is the Keylite 500. Beautiful looking thing, nice and small. I've got loads of keychain lights, so I've been comparing this. These are still early days. I've only had it for a few days, but look, it's CNC milled aluminum or aluminium, depending on where you are in the world, and it has like drop corners. You see how that corner is like slightly dropped? It's alternative corners, not the other ones, and that's dropped with a little hinge. And the reason it has that little pin through there is because it has this nice little section here which allows you to, well, you can stick your USB in it basically. So if you open that up, I'll do this one-handed. So there it is. So it is Typ-C chargeable, and I believe it to be power delivery. In other words, you can go from Typ-C to Typ-C. And don't worry, I will show you the light in a moment. I am waffling here, but I'm pretty impressed with it so far. Listen, it's all well made and well put together, but typical of Acebeam. All Acebeam stuff is like that and always is like that. So this is the Keylite 500D. Now the clue's in the name there. 500 lumens is its maximum output. It has one button, and by the looks, one sort of, is that a torque screw there? One little torque screw there. I'll have a look at that when I'm back in the house. And here is some of the details and the serial number of mine. So pretty nice. Now, here's the interesting thing. Let's look at this carefully. So there's two emitters there, both TIR, so total internal refraction. Now, they're slightly different. Now, the reason they're slightly different is they're doing slightly different things. Even though this isn't like a thrower and a flood and all that, it's a kind of a combination. I'll walk along while I'm talking here so we can get to an area where you can get a good look at the beam. So it's doing two slightly different things. I'll get close here. I've done this in 4K HDR. It's the highest bit rate I can go with, so there should be enough quality there so you can look at that, especially if you've got a big TV. So one's slightly more frosted than the other, but they're both TIRs, so you're not going to get mega throw on this, but again, it's only 500 lumens. So let's come along to this field here and let's turn this out and I will show you something. Right, so if I kneel down a bit, we are down by the deck here. Very nice. Okay, so let's have a quick look at this. So if I press the side button, you'll see that it turns green. Why is it doing that? That gives me an indication of the battery level. If that was to change to red, you know that it's gone low. So it's a simple one. It's one click on, one click off. Dead simple. Although if you want to go straight to moon mode, which is 1 lumen, you click and hold. So there's one lumen. Pretty good. And you can see the green there initially illuminates to tell you the battery level. So look at that. Now if I come up to, that's like waist height, you're not getting a lot of light, are you? But it is lovely and diffuse. It's kind of like a neutral off towards the cool end of the spectrum in regards tints. Now we'll go through the modes. Now it is a backwards one. Now what I mean by backwards one is it doesn't ramp up, it ramps down. So it starts on the highest and ramps down. Some people like that, some people don't. So we'll go through that now. So click and turn it on, and then I'll show you. It ramps backwards. So if I click and hold, it'll go through the modes. Boom, boom, boom. See that? So you've got 500. I think that's pretty nice. Does it go out into that field? Little bit. If I hold it up, look, see how one of those beams is pushing a little bit, but again, 500, and there is step down on this. In fact, there's multiple step downs on this, so I'll have to go through that in the full review. So if we go to the next one, so that's 500, next one's 200, so 200 maximum lumens, but again, looks fine, nice and diffuse, not super bright. I mean, there's not a lot to say about the beam. Let's come down a little bit so you can get a look at it on this floor. You see that? If I put it close to the floor, so there's your 200 lumens. And the next one is 60 lumens. So not a lot. Let's see if I could walk by that. So there's my shoes. So if I point it towards my shoes, you can see that's what it looks like. So yes, I could walk by that, just 60 lumens. And you get a nice long run time from that. And then the next one, it will ramp it back up. So there's your maximum. In fact, yeah, that is quite floody left and right. So if I go far left, look, it's still getting most of that path. And then far right, still getting a bit of that path. Let's try on this field here. I'll go through the modes just so you can see. Yeah, look, the start of that field there, the unploughed bit. So let's go through it. 500, 200, 60, and then down to, I mean, it depends how many lumens you need for the job at task. I would argue for a keychain light, it's not always going to be like for a thrower or something like that. Let's look at some of this foliage and see what it looks like. And then into the trees. Let's go through the modes there, 200. So there's this maximum, 500 in the trees. And there's some colour there so you can have a look at. I've done this in 10-bit. So if you've got an HDR TV, make sure it's in that mode. Pretty nice, especially on those reds. I don't think this is a high CRI light though, it's certainly not what it's marketed as, but pretty good. And again, you know, on videos like this, I need to show you side by side with other lights, which I will do in the review, but I can do a walk and talk with other lights. I brought a pocket full because I'm out testing all the time. So I'll go through these modes at this location. So go closer to these trees here, that's it, right. Let me just scratch my head, there you go, right. So there's 500, boom, boom. Now bear in mind, yeah, that's its maximum there, that's your turbo. So that's pretty good. I'm trying not to waffle too much here, because there's not that much you can say about a keychain light other than, is it functional? Is it lightweight? Is it the hand? Are there attachment options? How long does the battery last? Can you use it whilst it's charging? These are all things which I will cover in the review. It's quite nice on those reds. I'll move it around there. And there's not a lot of heat coming off this, but there shouldn't because it's only 500. Although it's a double emitter there. That's brilliant in that field, look. But again, you get step down on that. So let's go through those modes again. So if we click and hold, moonlight. Now if you go through the modes, there's high, medium, low. High, medium, low, and then there's your straight to turbo. In fact, I must have had those wrong before, so I had those completely wrong. Let's go through this properly now then. So if we go into normal mode, so we'll turn it on there. So high, medium, low. So high, medium, low there. And then remember, you have a double click, straight to turbo. You do have a strobe, so strobe warning coming up. You're about to see a strobe for people who are photosensitive. Yeah, there's your strobe. It's not very tactical, it's not very bright, but it is alternating. Watch, see that? So you've got a rapid flicker, then a slower flicker. I like ones that do that. It's a little bit more disorientating for someone, although all strobes are disorientating and they have a momentary effect there. So, okay, I'll turn the strobe off now. So it's safe to look if you are a strobe phobic or whatever the hell, whatever the proper word is. Right, so what am I out testing this with? Because it's all very well me saying, look at this light, but I'm testing it with loads of little lights. Small, lower powered lights below sort of 500-ish. I mean, people could say, well, hang on, what about the Typ-C and the Tiny 2 and all this? Yeah, okay, they're up there with high output. What if you just want something small? So this is very small. It uses a AAA battery. This is the EDC one. Still a good light from Lumen Top. It is a twisty, and I'll show you. In fact, just before I do that, I'll just show you. It is a faceted lens set up there as a TIR. So we'll go through this. It's an older emitter, but if I tighten that, there you go. So you've got low. I think this one goes backwards as well, doesn't it? Yeah. So this is its highest output. Now, I think that's pretty good, but left and right, look, as soon as I do that, it cuts off. Even though it's a TIR, it's quite projected forward. But this is only 120 lumens. So I think that's pretty good, but bear in mind, this is not using lithium ion, is it? If it's using a AAA, you know, you have the capacity of going and getting a AAA and sticking that in. It's a similar size to what I've just showed you, but you're not getting the same output, are you? Still a very good light. I've got nothing but good things to say about this. A little bit of yellowness and corona shift there, and tint shift. See if when you go from the middle to the outside there, but as an EDC light, and I like this ribbed effect on it, pretty good. So that's just something that I am comparing it against. I am also comparing it with, now bear in mind, because I've got 10 pockets here that I've got to deal with. So if I go to pocket number A, right, turn this light back on. Remember this one, Nikkor tube, about 45, 50 lumens, not even that. Very, very lightweight, very slim. But again, you could argue similar kind of size. This is obviously thinner. And again, you can charge it via USB. So a lot of people like this. I don't like this as much because it has spill back on the eye. So when you actuate it, you see how a lot of that comes back. I think that's a bit of a waste. There should be a cover there. But I'll show you what that looks like. It's very white. There you go. So very white beam look. you know, really lightweight and cheap Nightcore tube. There is a Tube V2, just so you're aware. This is the older one, so you can get a little bit better of an output, but very white, harsh light. And in regards to throw, well, there ain't any throw. Look, you know, you certainly see nothing, because again, low output, and it's spreading that light out. So you know, there's not a lot you can do with that. Okay, so what else am I comparing it with? I'm comparing it with, let me check, let me get the headlamp back on, right. This is the K2, I believe, by Astrolux, and this does have a high CRI. And again, the ones in this form factor, you'll notice they tend to have auxiliary lights there. So you've got a high CRI or a red or a blue or a UV and all that. I'm not going to go into this on this because this isn't a direct comparison, but just to let you know they are there. But if I turn this out and turn this on, if it goes on, there you go. Chrome's very low. But if we go through the different modes, there you go, and there's high, I believe. Yeah, it's ramping this one, so watch. You can ramp it up and then ramp it down. I think that's a nice warm tint on that. Again, I'm a little bit of a tint snob, but let's see how that pushes. That's not bad, is it? Let's turn around. Because you know what it looked like before when I was using the Keylite. That's pretty good, look. I think that does a good job. Now look, as soon as I move that aside, virtually nothing. So it's not spreading out, but again, it's not really a standard sort of TIR setup this. So you're going to get a little bit of push on this, even though this is a very small light. And these small form factors like this, you're generally going to get about 300 to 400 lumens. So again, I'm not going to go over all the figures and annoy people here. I'm going to try and make this rapid. So that's the K2, still a pretty good light. So get shot of that one. What else am I checking it out with? I'm checking it out with, let's have a little look here. This is the T1 from X-Star, again, similar setup, and you can see it does have the auxiliaries there underneath there. So you've got added function because of that, but again, Typ-C rechargeable like most of the others, and you're looking at about in that same sort of 300-ish range. Let's have a look at that. Do that. So let's turn that on. I'll put that on. That's its maximum. Pretty good. In fact, that's probably better than the last one, isn't it? Although the tint is different, so it can appear brighter. But far left and right, it's okay, isn't it? I'll rapidly get through these. Let's come down a little bit and look at this. Pretty good. These are just all little options if you wanted something not as powerful and not as up-to-date as the Keylite. But again, the Keylite has just come out. Pretty good system. Boom. Right, stick that in yet another pocket. Right, what else am I checking it with? I'm checking it with the Tiny from Nightcore. Now I realise there's a Tiny 2, but the reason I'm comparing it to this is because this is only 380 lumens, I believe. Kind of like a faceted lens like the EDC1 from Lumentop there. But again, I'm using slightly older lights because I don't want to say, well, look, it's rubbish compared to this one. That's 800 lumens. Well, yeah, it will be, because that's a much bigger output, right? So if we try this and I turn that down, right? Here's the Tiny, boom. That's pretty startling though, for 380. Very wide beam on that, look. Very bright, very wide beam. You do have a kind of slow over time ramp down on these Nightcores that I've noticed when I've done runtime tests. They will slowly ramp down. Let's look at this foliage so you can compare to the last one. Very bright though, I would say. I'm kind of impressed with that. And bear in mind, this path is very wet. Just to show you, it's a very wet path. You might not be able to see that, but it is. And because of that, it's going to appear quite dark. Okay, so what else have we got to test with? So I'm also out testing. Let's turn this light on. This is the old Nightcore tip. Again, I know there's a Typ-C in all of this, but again, I'm going for the slightly lower end because it's more fair. But again, it's similar to the last one. So if I turn it on, it's kind of a frosted optic, so not quite as impressive as that last one, but pretty good. I'm sure you're getting it in that sort of 300 to 400 lumen range. Really good. And again, there are better ones now, but again, I'm trying to compare similar lumen output with a similar form factor. Pretty good. And there it is on the foliage. Not bad, not bad. What does it do in this field? Let's have a look. There's the whole of the field. Not bad, eh? Look. Is that better or worse than the Keylite? It's less lumens, but then the Keylite is more diffuse, because look, as soon as I go left, you can hardly see anything to the far left and right. Well, that's just something to bear in mind. It depends on your use case, how you're going to use the light. What else am I testing it with? Well, this happens to be another Nightcore. This is a Nightcore Tiki, which again is kind of multifunctional. It's in that sort of 300-ish range, but you'll notice it is rechargeable with USB at the top there, and it does have, in the middle there, you'll see there's like multifunction lights, so you've got the auxiliaries if you need them. Right, let's turn out the headlamp, and try the Nightcore Tiki. That's pretty good. Not bad. Again, a little bit of push. What's it like on the foliage? More of a neutral tint on this one. Not harsh at all. But is it pushing out? So let's get closer to these trees where I was before. Right, let's see. So if I point towards these trees, that's kind of like even across the board, isn't it? It's good far left, good far right, but not a lot of output. I mean, it looks cool when it's running. Look, I like the way it does that. There is a glow-in-the-dark version, which I have of this, and this glows once you've been using it, which is pretty cool. Okay, and I'm also testing it with, I will get there, I've brought so many lights. I think this is, now is this the jet beam, or is this the, yes, this is the jet beam, because I was looking at something from Rovivon, which is a similar form factor. This is the little jet beam here. I think this is called the mini one. Again, you could say, well, is that just exactly the same as the Tiki? It's very similar, let's be honest. Very, very similar. And USB rechargeable, and you have an older emitter there. See what you think. Right, let's get this off. Right, let's turn this on. Right, that's pretty nice. I would say that's kind of like what we've just looked at, but maybe it's a little bit brighter, different tint, a little bit whiter. What does it look like on this foliage here? Very bright, almost has like a persistent hot spot in the middle. Okay, and what's it like in this field? There it is on the floor. And then we'll come along to the field. There's the field. That's quite impressive, look. Interesting, so that's by Jet Beam. Jet Beam do some good stuff actually. Anyway, turn that out, right. What are we supposed to be looking at? Let's go through some of the stats. Right, milled, this is about 19 grams in total. These are my early thoughts, just remember that. I will do a full review. It does have this lovely sort of machined edge here. I'm quite a fan of that, and that will lift up and you can Typ-C charge it there. Will it run whilst it's charging? I will tell you that in the full review. Same with power delivery, but it's Typ-C to C, I believe. You have the battery level indicator here, so green tells you that it's pretty good. Once it gets down, it'll go red and then it'll start flashing red when it's really, really, really low. And as you can see, it is a dual output, dual emitter there, look. See that? So one's slightly different to the other, though. You can see it's a double TIR, but slightly different. So this comes with, I believe it to be a 1.5 meter drop rating, and it's IP66, so it's dust resistant, well, dust proof, I suppose you could say, and water resistant. It's not waterproof, so you can't dunk this in a bucket of water for hours after hour. Let's turn this out and I'll show you. And then you've got all of these settings. So click and hold gives you moon, which is not a lot there. There's your moon. And then if you keep clicking and holding, it will go through the other modes there. So it's just showing you there. Now, bear in mind, I have just locked that. So if you double press, there you go. So it does have E-lock. So it's a press and hold for that, which I would probably do it slightly differently, but okay, that's what they've chosen. And then we'll go through the modes here: high, medium, low, high, medium, low. See that? Let's come up a little bit so you can see in the trees, and let's go to turbo. So when it's on, double press turbo, and we'll walk along a bit. I think that's pretty good. There you go. So 500 max lumens, but it does have multiple step downs, and I'll show you this field here. So I'll slowly rotate so you can get a nice view. So I am holding this at the moment at shoulder height, just so you know. I'm not trying to cheat, and if you know, I see people holding flashlights right up and going, look, that one goes further. Yeah, well, look, just to show you, look, there's my hand, see? Shoulder height. That's pretty impressive for a small light. I love the form factor and the fact that it is basically the same size as, well, similar size to a AA cell battery, but you can just charge it. Everyone's got a USB charger now, well, they should have. Look at that. And then let's go into the canopy here. Again, you will get step down on this. I keep reiterating that because sometimes people go, what's the most powerful light? Well, yeah, but for how long? If you want the most powerful light for 20 seconds, I'll tell you, but is that any use? Unless you've got an emergency for just 20 seconds in your life. Yeah, I'm very impressed with that. Right, that's enough waffling. A full review up when I can. There's not a lot of heat coming from it either on turbo. Full review up when I have time. Obviously, you know, I do genuinely test these for a couple of weeks. So I'll keep carrying this. Let's see how the coating on it and everything stands out. Let's go through some of the modes there. Brilliant. Even the strobe's pretty decent. It's not mega bright though. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, well, so we'll walk along here. So any questions, take them down below. I've tried to keep this brief, but I think, unfortunately, I'm just looking at the timer here. It's something like 19 minutes I've just spent waffling, so apologies for that. So I'll get to this when I can. I've got so many lights at the minute. I've got one from Flamp, whoever the hell they are, and another couple of companies. So I'll get those when I can. Right, thanks for joining me. Any questions, stick them down below and I'll get them, but full review when I've carried this for at least 2 weeks. So thank you very much for joining me and good night.